Victoria has recorded a triple-digit increase in new coronavirus cases for the 12th consecutive day and set a new high. Reporter Elias Clure has more from Melbourne.
We heard the Chief Health Officer, Professor Brett Sutton, say this is disappointing, concerning, and that we haven't turned the corner. So if you break down that number of 428, which, as you said, is quite confronting news, over 370 still under investigation, 57 from known outbreaks, and of course, tragically, 3 more fatalities today. A man in his 80s, another man in his 70s, and a woman in her 80s. Now, in terms of hospitalisations, 122 currently in hospital. That's up 13 since yesterday, but the government's still expecting that dozens and dozens of those 428 people that were diagnosed with coronavirus will eventually have to be hospitalised. Now, in terms of people in intensive care, over 30 now, 31 people in intensive care. Of course, yesterday the government announced that it was bolstering its intensive care units, but again, more concerns for the government. And in terms of these outbreaks, still the focus is on the northwest and west of Melbourne. The Altaqua College in Essendon in Melbourne's northwest, now 160 cases linked to that cluster, and down the road at the Menarock Aged Care Facility, another 38 cases. In Ardea, 36 cases at the Aged Care Centre, Estia Aged Care Facility. So again, more concerns for the government as the virus continues to spread. I mentioned that the public health team's greatest concern was in the northwest of Melbourne, but it says dozens and dozens of cases now all over Melbourne and the Mitchell Shire. Now, there's been increased testing, of course. 1.2 million tests have been conducted in Victoria since January 1. The Premier today very strong on a number of fronts, but in particular people moving around the city for exercise. He mentioned that police had reported issuing a fine to 2 people in a car who drove from Coburg in Melbourne's north to the Mornington Peninsula. He said that's not on, and people should try to stay within their postcode if possible. Let's have a listen to the Premier.
As we approach this weekend, it is not a normal weekend. These numbers are very challenging. We've always said it would get worse before it got better. Let's not any of us contribute to the fact that we have got significant virus and it is spreading across the Victorian community. Let's not contribute to that. Let's do everything we can to pull that up. Ultimately, good judgment, common sense.
So, Elias, how is the Victorian government responding to the virus spread in regional communities?
Well, again, this is another concern. Over 40 active cases now in Melbourne's regional areas compared to just 5 last week. Now, as a result of that, it's issued public health advice for people to wear masks if they cannot properly socially distance. Now, that's the public health advice issued to people in Melbourne. It's also established 5 new public health teams to help health officials in those areas properly contact trace in the case of people getting the virus. It's also set up several more testing sites. Now, of course, they've set up a ring or roadblocks around Melbourne and the Mitchell Shire to prevent people taking in the virus to these regional areas, but they are still concerned that this virus, which is spreading so rapidly in Melbourne, will creep into these regional areas. Let's have a listen to the Health Minister, Jenny Mikakos.
We want to encourage regional Victorians to not be complacent, to do common sense things like staying home as much as possible, but particularly if they are sick, it is vital that they stay home and they present to be tested even if they have mild symptoms. We have had some cases of people who might be commuting to Melbourne, going back to regional communities and therefore infecting their family members.
Now, Professor Brett Sutton also mentioned earlier today that we haven't turned the corner, and he says we need to bear in mind that more restrictions could be enforced if the current restrictions don't work.
Elias Clure reporting there from Melbourne.